And welcome back. This is the first conversation of a rather spirited show this morning. We have with us on the couch the Chief Executive Officer of the Belize Central Prison, the Kolbe facility, Kolbe Foundation, sorry, Mr. Virgilio Murillo. Good morning, sir, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
We're going to be having a conversation with you in respect of things and issues that have been taking place at the Belize Central Prison of late. More specifically, the allegation of an incident where an inmate was claiming that he was raped by a fellow inmate. This incident has played out in the news a number of days in last week, but for me, I believe it speaks to a broader issue in the sense of safety and security and certain policies that are in place at the Belize Central Prison. Would you begin by sharing with us perhaps a snapshot of what took place and what the measures are going forward?
Okay. First of all, I believe, as the CEO for the prison, the whole matter, I believe, was blown out of proportion. An incident did occur, no doubt about it. In my mind, an illegal act, a criminal act, if you want to look at it that way. And pretty much as I investigated the matter more, I begin to pick up bits and pieces. What happened, the prisoner, the victim, was sent to a place called administrative segregation for assaulting another prisoner. This is his second such offense against prison discipline. And he was being sanctioned at the time. He was placed in a cell along with two other inmates, including the alleged perpetrator. And what has happened is that the perpetrator, I must tell you, is in that location because he had violated his parole conditions. And his actual date of discharge is on the 25th of July 2019. So his parole was revoked, like I said, because he violated his parole conditions. As far as I am aware, he is a repeat offender. He's been coming to prison for the last 15 years since I have been there. And his criminal record shows that he was never charged for any sexual offense at all during this entire 15 years. Yeah. His offenses has always been offenses of what you call crimes of dishonesty, such as theft and burglary, and I don't even think he has much robbery if he does. And even whilst in prison over this entire period of time, the offenses he has committed against prison discipline has always been offenses of dishonesty again. One particular instance, he was caught with, I guess, a cell phone and other contraband items, So he was considered very low risk because we have three levels of risk at the prison. We have low risk, we have medium risk, and we have high risk. When a prisoner comes to prison, they are normally classified and we place them where we believe they should be, because we need to be very effective in our classification of inmates, so that for various reasons. One is for security, like you said, and safety, and two, it's so you can assist them with their rehabilitation and training efforts. Yeah. Because remember, prisons has their role to play, and the purpose of imprisonment by international standards is certainly to protect society against crime and to reduce a thing we call recidivism, which simply means stop having people come back to prison over and over again. So that is what that means. And So the guys were placed there, one for violating his parole condition, the other guy for assaulting inmates, and of course this is the second time. So we saw no problem with the placement. Okay, 3 of them were in the cell initially, and one got discharged after he had served his sanction. And we get this report on the 29th. But what is very strange is that the victim made confessions to my medical doctor and my intelligence unit to the effect that 3 days after the third inmate had been discharged, this inmate, the alleged perpetrator, was seen masturbating. He saw him masturbate in front of him. Not only one occasion, but on a number of occasions. And to my mind, the alarm he raised on the 29th, he could have raised that very same alarm on the first time he saw that guy masturbated in front of him. The prison, to the best of my knowledge, and I guess I don't need to do much to convince the public about the prison. The prison has not been in the news for many, many years now in terms of safety.
Sure. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to jump in there because I think one of the questions that this particular incident has raised, I don't think anybody's very surprised by the allegation. I think in the fact that there are expectations oftentimes that things will take place within a prison that people don't always know about. The most concerning issue is the allegation by the victim that the security guards were perhaps aware as to what is taking place.
Complicit.
And we need to get to the bottom of that in terms of what your investigation has been so far. Now, we know when we talk about any particular organization, even the police, there are people who are very professional and there are some who don't do things the way it should be done. What has your investigation revealed so far? And what are the actual protocols in the prison as to how much you monitor this particular, this segregated area?
Well, like I said, Marlene, we have some fairly effective systems in place. And absolutely there's, like I tell you, you said that when it comes to the police and other big organizations, you might have situations where your people let you down. Now, one of the things I believe may have happened in this situation, I was a bit furious about the whole situation when I heard the allegations. And what I did is I terminated the officer on the spot. The officer really did not explain what happened because, you know, like I said, I was the one that called the police on the whole matter. And that is why the whole issue of covering up, I don't know where it came from. Definitely, when I heard of it on impulse, I just said, we're not going to tolerate that in this prison. I'm sorry. I mean, this place need to be secure and safe. And immediately I called the Hattieville police and I told them, listen, we might have a possible rape situation here. Can you please come in and investigate? Now I need to make crystal clear. I was trying to protect the identity of the victim. And I'll tell you what, particularly in a prison setting, you don't want those kinds of news. I was trying to keep it confidential so that this thing could have, you know, at least played out properly for the safety of and the privacy of the same victim, really. Not so much for the perpetrator, but for the victim, because I'll tell you something, those things can play out rather negatively for the prison. Majority of my inmates, I can tell you, are definitely people who wouldn't support that kind of act.
But here is the thing, Mr. Murillo. We have been hearing stories about prison life. And prison life includes allegations and rumors such as these, where you hear that people masturbate in their cell, people take advantage of each other sexually in the cell, or whatever other number of allegations you hear coming out of the prison system, if I may. While I applaud the bravery of this individual to come forward with an allegation of this nature. Because a lot of times, men, for whatever reason, keep it to themselves whenever they are in a situation where either they have been taken advantage of or they are being taken advantage of. So to see this individual come forward is commendable. But as Marlene said, it's almost nothing new in a sense, because we've been hearing of these kinds of allegations out of the system. What do you do as the person who's at the helm of the foundation to either curb certain activity or to address it head on?
I will insist on saying that I could almost say that probably between 95 to 98% of my prisoners are not into that kind of behavior. I've been there 15 years, and one of the qualities of a prison leader is to know their inmates. And if there's one person that knows every inmate, even by name, that person is me. And I know what they cater to and what they don't cater to. You know, so that is the first thing. I know these things are inherent. These are what you call the inherent dangers of being in a prison. But I don't know that they're being taken chance, or they're being chanced or taken advantage of. I don't know that that is the situation. And like I tell you, we need to be very careful too, because at the end of the day, even the perpetrator is, as of this point, only accused. And he will have his opportunity and his time to go to the court and convince them that he did not, in fact, rape this guy. And I think that is why the police, as of this point, may have charged him for unnatural crime as opposed to rape. We have all sorts of systems in place to make sure these things don't happen. But one of the things you need to understand too, we have over 1,250 prisoners. And with the complement of staff that we have, it's highly impossible to prevent just about everything from happening. I mean,
that's understandable.
You know, so we have our regular patrols. We have, like I said, we have members of the Inmate Advisory Committee who looks into the concerns of inmates. And it includes these very same things. As a matter of fact, the Inmate Advisory Committee members, which is made up of inmates, like I said earlier, they actually go into these buildings that they represent to listen to the concern. And if there's an abuse or a perceived abuse by any of our guards, they get to report that to me directly too. So I think the mechanisms that we have in place, I believe, are sufficient to address these sorts of issues. I don't know that prisoners feel unsafe in the prison. This is 1 out of a million. I've been in the prison for 15 years, like I said. And I remember a little after we had taken over, because when we took over, the youths, the under 18s, were amongst the adult populations. And in those times, I remember those things used to happen. But remember, they are children.
For clarity's sake, right? The Wagner's facility is where the youth.
Yes.
That's where that's a building we built.
Since you began working there?
Yeah, we built that back in 2003, thereabout. And that was because we were not happy with having, first of all, that didn't meet international standards.
Absolutely.
You know? So the first thing we had to do was to take the under 18s and put them into their own facility where they cannot be taken advantage of by the male adults. So that's one of the first fixes we did.
Let me get a bit of clarity, because what I hear from you is that this is an isolated incident.
It is.
In the 15 years, you've been CEO for 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
You've been with the foundation for 15 years. How often are allegations of rape reported?
Well, to be very honest, this is really the first such case. Now, that is not to say that we have not heard or we have not caught prisoners in very compromising situations that would give the indication that they're into some sort of sexual act. And we have punished them for those kinds of act because it's not allowable in a prison setting. I'll tell you the truth. If other prisoners pull up on these guys in that kind of activity, you know, that could earn them a severe beating, you know. they would probably kill them too. I'm telling you straight up.
Let me go somewhere.
And that's what there is now this allegation being made, and I think to say that it doesn't happen, hasn't happened, is just a guess that we can make, and I don't think anybody really believes that. Now that this particular allegation has come forward, and you know what? Oftentimes with sexual assault cases, it takes one person to come forward, and past victims then feel more comfortable speaking out. Has there been any investigation as to whether other people have been victim to this potential perpetrator or others? Since Pandora's box is open, you can have the conversation in the prison with the inmates. Has there been further investigation?
Well, like I said, the whole issue has been turned over to the police.
Yeah.
I want the police to do their work. In my mind, like I said, it's a criminal act.
Yes.
Now, the Pandora box being open, I have no issue with the Pandora box being open now. Because if there's other cases, then let the Pandora box open. At the end of the day, this is the first such incident that I became aware of.
Okay.
And maybe the guy has been bold and all of that. But I feel comfortable to say that I don't believe we have these kinds of things happening rampantly like people might perceive.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Murillo, and I'll go out on a limb here.
Sure, no problem.
In terms of where I'm going with the conversation. Sexuality is a fact, right? Man, woman, man,
Yeah.
however
woman.
you mix it up, it's a fact, right?
It's a fact.
Such that you have inmates who are living together in a confined space for whatever length of time as their sentence determines. Perhaps you have men who consent to that kind of activity amongst each other. And I've heard that efforts have been made in cases where perhaps there is that consent to provide these inmates with condoms, for instance, so that they protect themselves in the act. And I've also heard that that is discouraged by the prison system, so to speak, where you can't have a condom on your person in the cell. Can you speak to us why that is being prohibited? Because I get the sense that, one, they're trying to promote safe sex, but then the prison, I'm using the word prison loosely, right? The prison discourages or frowns upon that kind of a thing.
Well, first of all, I believe that I think you're pretty much alluding to conjugal visits and those kinds of things. And like I tell you, I know for sure condom is definitely an unauthorized article in the prison. And if anybody want to champion the cause of conjugal visit for inmates, I guess that's going to happen, I guess, by some other organization other than Kolbe Foundation. But for right now, we don't have anything in our laws that allows conjugal visits. And we don't issue condoms to our inmates because certainly prisons are all about order and discipline. And listen to me, the prison in my mind is the last hope that society has to feel a sense of protection right now, you know. And prisoners cannot have all the amenities that they have out in society in a prison. I'm sorry. We focus very hard on rehabilitation, but at the end of the day, we also have tough love for these guys because one of the things I think society needs to know is that when you look at the demographics of who prisoners are, hey, these guys hardly have passed standard 3, you know? So we need to understand. And then Nelson Mandela himself, he said it very, very, very well. He said that a country, no one knows a country until one has been inside its jails. And he goes on to say that a country should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones.
Absolutely.
If you look at the demographics of my prison, you will see that these people are hardly educated, they are very marginalized and very poor, right? And I'm saying that what we try to do there is try to see how we could get them to change their attitude. And I have no difficulty with that because at the end of the day, the numbers, to me, it's all in the numbers. 3 years ago when I took over the prison, we had 1,600 inmates average daily. Today, we are down to 1,230. We don't want the prison to be a holiday camp. That is not the objective of prisons. Remember what prisons are. They are to protect society from crime and to reduce recidivism.
Despite the fact that there are some persons, there are people out there who look at it as a holiday camp because, for instance, it's harder for them to fend for themselves out here than it is for them to be incarcerated where they are taken care of. They have shelter, they have food, those basic amenities.
That is a perception, and I'll tell you something strangely. I was looking at even the issue of immigration offenses. I see a higher recidivism when it comes to immigration offenses than I see with the regular the other crimes. Take for argument's sake, I matched this year with last year, and I saw a reduction of almost 60 crimes of dishonesty in terms of imprisonment. Now that might have something to do with the police effectiveness in investigating,
and court
the court system, everything, right? I have no control over that. But I'm saying that I have 200 and almost 10 parolees out in society, and some have been out in society since 2006, 2007, and they continue to be successful.
And you know, we're quickly running out of time, and I really want to go back to the most important part of this conversation, which is understanding. And you quote Nelson Mandela, they have it up at this time, and I think it is absolutely important that we know. There are some people who think when somebody is in prison, that's it. Forget what happens to them there. But these are human beings. These are fathers, sons, brothers, and that's just in the male section. And they still have human rights. They are stripped of particular liberties, but they still are entitled to the dignity of a human being. What is being done in the prison? What are some of the policies that you can share with us that ensure that if someone is in prison, whether on remand or on a sentence, that they're not being stripped of that dignity, that it is not allowed for?
Well, what I can tell you, and I'm happy that you raised it, because that would have slipped me. There's so much things in my head. I could write a whole book on prisons, right? And I think this is part of Kolbe's success, because we have approached prison management on a human rights approach, as well as respect for the law. Like I tell you, it's a delicate thing, and it's very hard to make the balance. But at the end of the day, even the inmates in my mind know that you're genuinely, sincerely trying to help them get their lives back together. We know what imprisonment has done. I mean, I have seen for the last 15 years where prisoners have come and lost their entire family because the wife is unable to wait a little longer, so she finds a guy to help look after the children, because a lot of times these guys leave families out there. They were the only breadwinner, so to speak. And after 3 to 4 months, the guy loses his wife. I mean, he breaks the glass in the prison. Sometimes he punches the visit glass when his wife comes to see him to tell him the bad news. We've seen that.
Moved on.
You know, and that, you can't go anywhere. We are of the belief that the deprivation of your liberty is the punishment. And this is where I think this speaks to the successes we've been having, because we have changed the culture for the prison altogether. Guards now try to be the big brother for these guys. And one of the positive way, or the best way to have an influence on an inmate, is to lead by example, so to speak. And I'll tell you something, the prison loses quite a lot of staff every year. And one of the requirements to be a prison guard is to have integrity. Because remember, the proper administration of the prison depends on first and foremost, your integrity. Secondly, it depends on your humanity. Thirdly, your professionalism. And fourthly, your personal suitability. I'm sorry, prison is a tough place to work. It requires a lot, it demands a lot, really. And if you can't meet one of those requirements, the prison cannot keep you. So this speaks to why we lose our people, aside from the wages they get too, because that is part of the issue too.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the public who has heard the story as told by the victim about their concerns for what perhaps may take place in the prison, and is something that is, let me say this differently. What would you say to the public about their concerns as to whether or not the rights of prisoners are being disregarded?
Well, like I tell you, every building has payphones. Every building. Prisoners can talk to their loved ones. Some of them are working, but every prisoner gets recreation, so they can come out and they can raise hell. And I'm sorry. One of the things I keep saying is that Belize has 360,000 inhabitants. And out of that, you're telling me only 1,250 is in prison? Then out of that 1,250, you're going to tell me only 50 is in administrative segregation? Is it that they're so bad-lucked? Is it that they're so unfortunate that they have to be segregated because of their violent behavior, their refractory behavior, so to speak? Something is not adding up there. I think a lot of times some of these guys have been so deceptive while they were in society to the point where they get caught. And then they go to the prison and they take that same mentality into the prison and want to continue to practice their deception and their fallacies, and it just doesn't work. And prisons is all about order and discipline. But I don't know that the public need to be worried about safety and security. I mean, let us understand. We've kept escapes down, my God. I mean, one escape over the last 3 years. Think about it. And it's not like you had to go to the prison because somebody got killed in the prison. Think about it seriously. And we have family members that comes to the prison to visit their loved ones, and I've gotten very good compliments from them, and they think that the prison is at a level unlike any other prison. I mean, I was just looking at a documentary this weekend with Honduras. Geez, the prisoners run the block, not the office.
Not the office, right?
All right, well, we're out of time. Of course, we want to thank you for coming in to be able to discuss some of the policies that are in place. And of course, we appreciate you being open enough to come in and share this information.
Thank you, Ms. Marlene.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're talking about Christmas safety with the Belize National Fire Department, so stay tuned.